The war was over, or so they believed. The Galactic Council had declared an end to the conflict. The enemy fleet, the Xelari Dominion, stood victorious, their warships orbiting what was left of humanity's last strongholds. Earth had gone silent. Human colonies, once thriving, were reduced to ruins. The few survivors scattered across the void, their distress signals lost in the cold emptiness of space. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, the leaders of the victorious species celebrated. The Xelari warlords raised their glasses in triumph, their reptilian faces curling into cruel smirks. The war had been long, brutal, but in the end, humanity had fallen. They were no longer a threat. Humanity was fierce, one Xelari admiral admitted, his sharp claws tapping against the metal table. But in the end, they were too weak. Their technology was impressive, but their numbers were too few. They never had a chance. The others nodded in agreement. The war had dragged on for years, but after Earth's fall, the remaining human forces had been easy to crush. The final battle had ended 2 months ago, and the Galactic Council had officially announced humanity's defeat. Now, the galaxy could move forward, without the stubborn, aggressive species that had once threatened their power. But something was wrong. Deep in the outer edges of the war-torn sectors, a lone Xelari outpost detected something unusual. A faint signal, almost a whisper, echoed through the empty space. The officer on duty, a young Xelari lieutenant, frowned as he studied the readings. "Strange," he muttered. "A distress signal." It was old, weak, barely registering on the scanners. But it was unmistakably human. He hesitated, debating whether to report it. No human ships were left. No survivors were expected. It had to be a malfunction. But then the signal changed. The weak transmission suddenly pulsed with power, like something ancient waking from slumber. The outpost's systems flickered. A deep rumbling noise came through the speakers, distorted but clear enough to send a chill down the lieutenant's spine. "We are coming." The signal vanished. The Xelari officer's claws trembled as he rushed to alert command. But before he could speak, alarms blared. The outpost's long-range sensors had detected movement. A massive object was approaching from the depths of space, something far larger than any known warship. The lieutenant barely had time to react before the screens went dark. The last thing he saw was a shadow, vast and unstoppable, moving toward the heart of the Xelari fleet. The war was over, but something was coming. The Xelari Dominion's command center was in chaos. Reports flooded in from outposts along the outer rim. An unknown vessel had entered the sector, heading straight for the Xelari fleet. Every sensor station that tried to scan it either went offline or returned corrupted data. The few visuals captured showed only a vast, dark silhouette, barely distinguishable against the void. Admiral Xovek of the Xelari sat rigid in his command throne aboard the warship Dominance. His reptilian eyes flicked across the reports, his clawed fingers tapping impatiently. "Impossible," he growled. "Humanity is finished. What ship could they possibly have left?" Across the room, an intelligence officer hesitated before speaking. "Admiral, before our systems blacked out, we intercepted a transmission from the vessel." Xovek turned sharply. "Show me." The officer played the recording. "We are coming." The voice was distorted, almost mechanical, but unmistakably human. The words sent a shiver through the room. Xovek clenched his jaw, refusing to acknowledge the unease creeping into his crew's expressions. "Humans are resourceful," he admitted. "Perhaps a few stragglers have salvaged an old battleship, but a single ship, no matter how large, will not change the outcome. Humanity is already dead." Yet deep inside, he felt something he had not felt in years, a sliver of doubt. The unknown ship was now within striking range of the Dominion's border fleet. 6 Xelari warships moved to intercept, their energy cannons charging. "This is Admiral Xovek of the Xelari Dominion," he announced through the fleet-wide channel. "Unidentified vessel, You are in restricted space. Power down immediately, or we will open fire. Silence. Then, the lights inside the Dominance flickered. The fleet's comms crackled, and all 6 warships lost navigation for a full 5 seconds. When their systems came back online, the unknown ship was no longer where it had been. It had moved without any detected propulsion, without a trace. It was now behind the lead auxiliary destroyer. A second later, the destroyer vanished in a silent explosion. Sovik's breath caught in his throat. There had been no weapon discharge, no visible attack, just a sudden, absolute annihilation. One moment the warship existed, and the next, it was gone. Panic erupted among the fleet. Engage. Fire at will. The auxiliary warships unleashed a barrage of plasma and kinetic rounds. The space around the unknown ship lit up with deadly energy. But when the explosions faded, the vessel was untouched. And then it answered. A single beam of crimson light lanced from the ship's underbelly. It moved with slow, deliberate precision, like a predator playing with its prey. The beam grazed the hull of auxiliary cruiser. At first, nothing happened. Then, the cruiser's entire structure buckled inward, folding like paper before imploding in a flash of blue energy. Admiral Sovik's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary human warship. It was something else, something humanity had hidden away, a ghost of their vengeance, returning from the grave. And it had only just begun. Panic swept through the auxiliary fleet as the unknown vessel tore through their formation like a specter of death. Every attempt to scan it, every desperate barrage of plasma fire, every evasive maneuver, it was all useless. The ship moved like a shadow, defying the laws of physics, appearing and disappearing as if it existed between realities. Admiral Sovik slammed his fist onto the control panel, his claws cracking the surface. How is this possible? No human ship has ever displayed such capabilities. The intelligence officer beside him was trembling, his scales pale. Admiral, the database has no records of any human vessel with this kind of technology. It shouldn't exist. And yet it did. The ship remained nameless. No transponder signal, no call sign, no identifier. It was as if the war itself had summoned a vengeful ghost. On the battlefield, the auxiliary warships struggled to maintain formation. Fear gripped them. The Dominion fleet, once the undisputed power in this sector, was now reduced to prey. Sovik turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to all ships. We need tow. We are coming. The voice interrupted him. The same distorted transmission from before, but this time it played directly through the Dominion's entire fleet network. The signal was impossibly strong, overriding their encrypted systems as if they were nothing more than a child's toy. Then the ship moved. A auxiliary battleship. The Devourer turned to retreat, but before its engines could fire, a pulse of red energy surged from the unknown vessel. For a split second, the Devourer's hull turned translucent, like glass reflecting a dying sun. Then the entire warship shattered. Not exploded, not imploded, shattered, like it had never truly existed. Sovik's heart pounded. This was not war. This was annihilation. He took a slow, deep breath. We need to know what we're dealing with. He turned to the intelligence officer. I don't care how. Scan that ship. Now. The officer hesitated but followed orders, activating the fleet's most advanced scanning arrays. The data feed sputtered, filling with static then. Human text appeared on the screen. The bridge crew froze. No one had inputted any commands. No one had even spoken. And yet the message was there, written in the ancient war language of humanity. This is the UNSC exile. The war is not over. Sovik felt a chill spread through his body. He had studied human history, studied their war tactics, their ships, their desperation. But he had never heard of the exile. What is this ship? He whispered. The intelligence officer's eyes darted over the data stream. Admiral, This vessel, it's not in any recorded human fleet, but its power readings, its energy output, he swallowed. It surpasses any warship ever documented. Sovek clenched his fists. He had underestimated humanity. Everyone had. And now, the deadliest warship in human history had returned from the shadows. The war was no longer over. It was only beginning. Admiral Sovek stared at the flickering text on the command screen. The name UNSC Exile pulsed like a heartbeat, a warning from something beyond comprehension. His fleet, once vast and dominant, had been reduced to trembling spectators in the face of a single warship. The bridge was silent except for the uneasy hum of the failing scanners. The intelligence officer, barely able to keep his composure, spoke in a hushed voice. "Admiral, we still have no record of this vessel. No battle logs, no construction data, nothing." Sovek's claws tightened around the armrest of his command chair. "That's impossible. Every warship has a history. But this one doesn't," the officer said, voice shaking. "It's like it was never meant to be found." Before Sovek could respond, a sudden, piercing alarm filled the command deck. Red emergency lights flared as the display screens distorted with static. The fleet's sensor grid, one of the most advanced in the galaxy, had just been rendered useless. "Status report," Sovek barked. The sensor operator's voice was barely a whisper. "Admiral, the Exile is gone." Silence. Sovek's gaze snapped toward the viewport. Where the warship had been seconds ago, there was now only empty space. No acceleration trail, no distortion field. It had simply vanished. A cold dread settled over the bridge. "Did it jump to FTL?" Sovek demanded. The navigation officer hesitated. "No, sir. There was no energy buildup, no spatial ripple. It didn't enter slip space. It just disappeared." Sovek's mind raced. How could a ship of that size just vanish? Even the most advanced stealth technologies left behind distortions, residual energy, something. But the Exile had left nothing. Then, the comms cracked to life. "You have taken much from us." The voice sent shivers through every soul on the bridge. It was human, but it carried a weight beyond mere words, a presence that felt like 1,000 voices speaking as one. "Now we take from you." The message ended. Then the first ship vanished. The Vanguard, one of the Dominion's heaviest dreadnoughts, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no warning. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, as if erased from reality itself. The fleet descended into chaos. Where did it go? Check the scanners. Impossible. That ship. Then another disappeared, and another. In less than 10 seconds, 3 of the Dominion's mightiest warships had been erased from existence. Sovek gritted his teeth. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a purge. He forced himself to think. Humanity had never wielded this kind of power, not even in their most desperate wars. If they had, the Dominion would have never survived. So where had this ship been? And why was it here now? The realization struck him like a dagger to the chest. This warship, it wasn't built during the war. It had been waiting. For centuries. Hidden. Watching. And now it had returned to fulfill its purpose. Sovek stood, his voice cold and firm. "All remaining ships, full retreat. We can't fight what we don't understand." The crew hesitated, but they obeyed. Engines roared to life, and the surviving fleet turned, preparing to escape. But before they could jump, the Exile reappeared, directly in their path. Sovek's heart stopped. The warship no longer moved like a phantom. It was deliberate, hungry. The view screen flickered again, and a final message appeared. "There is no escape." Then, the Exile fired. Admiral Sovek had witnessed many horrors in his lifetime. He had seen planets reduced to molten rock, fleets torn apart by the fury of war, and civilizations crushed beneath the iron fist of the Dominion. But nothing, compared to this. The UNSC Exile did not fire a traditional weapon. No kinetic slugs, no plasma lances, no missiles. Instead, reality itself seemed to shatter. A wave of darkness rippled from the warship's hull, spreading outward in an instant. It was not a simple energy pulse. It was absence, a void where space itself seemed to tremble. And then, Dominion warships began to vanish. Not in explosions, not in fire. They simply ceased to be. One moment, the Dominion's flagship Judgment Spear was there, its golden hull gleaming under the stars. The next, it was gone. No debris, no energy signature. It had been erased. Wake 8 A's Hey PP Inang. Zovek's voice was drowned out by the panicked screams of his officers. Every attempt to scan, to analyze, to understand what was happening only returned the same result. Error. "This isn't war," whispered the sensor officer. His hands were shaking. "This is extermination." Zovek refused to accept it. "Shields at maximum. Weapons. Fire everything we have." But even as the order was given, the bridge crew hesitated. Deep inside, they knew the truth. The Dominion's mightiest warships had no effect against the Exile. Still, they fired. Plasma bolts and railgun slugs streaked through the void, aimed directly at the warship that had brought terror to the stars. And then, they simply stopped. The projectiles never reached their target. They hit an invisible wall. No, not a wall. They struck something beyond their understanding, as if the laws of physics had simply changed. The weapon's fire dissipated into nothingness, and the Exile moved forward. A deep, unnatural sound echoed through the Dominion fleet, a low, rumbling tone, like the growl of something ancient and awake. It did not come from the warship's speakers. It resonated inside their minds. And then, a message. "You took everything from us." Sovek's blood ran cold. We were forgotten. He had no idea who they were. But now we remember. The remaining Dominion warships turned and fled, every single one pushing their engines beyond safe limits. Some ships overloaded their drives, detonating in desperate attempts to escape. Others simply powered down, their crews too terrified to move. Sovek's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. The Dominion was supreme. It had ruled the galaxy for centuries. The war was over. But now, the Exile had returned, and it was judging them. "Admiral, orders." A voice shouted over the chaos. Sovek's throat was dry. His claws dug into his chair. There was no order that could save them. But before he could speak, the Exile disappeared again. And then, the Dominion's homeworld received a message, a final warning. "You erased us from history. Now history will erase you." Panic spread across the Dominion's core systems like wildfire. The impossible reports had reached the highest levels of command. Entire fleets vanishing without a trace, weapons proving useless, and a human warship that seemed to defy reality itself. On the Dominion homeworld of Zalveris Prime, the High Council gathered in desperation. These were the rulers of the largest empire in the galaxy, beings who had never feared anything before. But now, their faces were filled with uncertainty. Admiral Sovek's transmission played on the Grand Chamber's display once more. His voice, once cold and commanding, was now shaking. "We were wrong. It was never over. The humans, they never truly left. We thought we won, but they were waiting, watching. And now they've returned." Then the transmission cut to static. Silence hung in the chamber. The UNSC Exile had disappeared after the battle, leaving behind only fear. Dominion fleets had abandoned their positions. Entire colonies had gone dark. The Empire was crumbling, not from war, but from pure terror. Perhaps, High Chancellor Vorin finally spoke, his voice strained. "Perhaps they want peace. We must open negotiations, offer reparations." The other counselors stared at him in disbelief. "Peace," Counselor Jaxus hissed. "With a force that erased an entire fleet, that ignored our weapons like they were nothing. You think they want peace? Vorin hesitated. He wanted to believe it, but deep inside, he knew the truth. This wasn't about peace. This was retribution. And then, the chamber shook. A deep hum filled the air, low, resonating, unnatural. The very atmosphere trembled. Every screen, every console flickered with static. Then, a single symbol appeared on every display, a symbol that had not been seen for centuries. The flag of old Earth. It was a simple design, blue and white, a golden wreath encircling the planet that had birthed humanity. A flag that had once flown proudly across the stars before the Dominion crushed humanity's last defenses. A flag that should have been erased from history. The counselors froze. Then came the voice. You thought we were gone. It echoed everywhere, not from speakers, not from communication devices. It resonated inside their minds, filling every corner of their consciousness. You thought you won. The chamber dimmed. The walls seemed to stretch, shadows twisting unnaturally. But we are still here. Outside, the sky over Xalvaris Prime darkened. The planet's defense grid, the strongest in the galaxy, flickered and failed. Every ship in orbit, every battleship, every dreadnought, lost power. And then, the UNSC Exile appeared. It didn't emerge from hyperspace. It didn't descend from the void. It was simply there. A massive, obsidian warship, its surface shifting like liquid metal. It had no visible engines, no weapon ports, no insignia. And yet, its presence alone sent terror rippling through the Dominion's most powerful leaders. The counselors felt it. A presence, ancient, cold, watching. The voice returned, louder now. You erased our history. You crushed our people. You buried our name. Now, we will bury you. And then, the war truly began. Across the galaxy, the Dominion was in chaos. The shockwaves of the UNSC Exile's sudden appearance reverberated through every star system, every planet that had once dared to challenge humanity. The once unshakable Dominion, now trembling in fear, realized too late that their arrogance had sparked a war they couldn't win. The Exile had broken through the defenses of the Dominion's greatest military strongholds with ease. The massive warship had no need for flashy displays of power. Its very presence was enough to send fleets scattering in terror. The once proud warships of the Dominion were no match for humanity's most terrifying creation. Humanity's tactics had always been unorthodox, often misunderstood by other species. The Dominion had thought themselves superior, with technology that rivaled even the ancient races of the galaxy. But nothing had prepared them for the Exile. Inside the Exile, the crew was not just human. It was the last of humanity's most elite warriors. These were the descendants of Earth's greatest generals, battle-hardened survivors who had been forgotten by the galaxy. They had never been defeated because they had never given up. And now, they were ready to show the galaxy exactly what that meant. On the bridge, Captain Kellen stood, his eyes fixed on the vast star system before him. The Dominion's capital lay just ahead. His crew was silent, waiting for his command. The tension was palpable. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and now they would make their final stand. Prepare the system, Captain. The voice of his chief officer, Lieutenant Nera, broke the silence. She had been by his side through every battle. Her voice was steady, but even she couldn't hide the anticipation in her eyes. She knew this was the moment that would define the future of the galaxy. Let's finish this, Kellen said simply, his voice a low growl. The words were enough. The Exile's engines roared to life, not with fire or light, but with a cold, almost deathly hum that sent a chill down everyone's spine. The massive warship, now fully powered, began to move, and the Dominion forces that had once believed themselves invincible could feel the ground beneath them begin to shake. In the Dominion's capital, High Chancellor Vorin stared at the holographic display in front of him. His hands trembled as he watched the incoming fleet. It was no longer a fleet. It was a storm, a fury of humanity's long-forgotten wrath. "Send everything we have," Vorin screamed, his voice breaking. Everything. Now. But it was too late. The Exile didn't need a fleet to destroy the Dominion. With its superior technology, its unmatched weaponry, and its battle-tested crew, it was a force of nature. As the Exile moved closer, every ship in the Dominion's arsenal fired, but their weapons fizzled out, powerless against the advanced shielding of the human warship. The Exile struck back, and the first shot sent shockwaves through the capital. Massive explosions tore through the Dominion's defenses, decimating entire fleets in a matter of seconds. "We warned you." Kellen's voice echoed across the galaxy, transmitted to every Dominion ship and every broadcast station. "You had your chance. Now, your empire ends." The final assault was relentless. The Dominion's fleet, crippled and shattered, had no hope of stopping the human warship. The Exile moved through their lines like a phantom, its weapons disintegrating anything it touched. No ship could escape. No fortress could withstand its firepower. The Exile had become a symbol of the final reckoning. As the final seconds ticked down, the Dominion's forces knew there was no way out. Their once proud empire, built on the backs of countless subjugated races, was crumbling in an instant. The galaxy watched as humanity, a species once thought to be conquered, defeated, and forgotten, had come back to take its place as the true power in the stars. Captain Kellen stood tall, watching the destruction unfold. There was no joy in his heart, only the cold satisfaction of justice. For the first time in generations, humanity had reclaimed its place, not just as a species, but as the ultimate force in the galaxy. The Dominion had learned the hard way. Never underestimate humanity. And as the last of the Dominion's strongholds fell, the crew of the Exile knew one thing was certain. The galaxy would never forget what they had witnessed. The human spirit, though tested and beaten, was still the deadliest force in the universe. Humanity's vengeance had been swift, but it was just the beginning of a new era, an era where no one would dare challenge humanity again.